Good evening, everyone, and welcome. My name is Rudi Page, and welcome to our new series, our third series of Overcoming Unseen Barriers in collaboration with Ealing Libraries.
Hello, Rudi.
Hi, and today we're celebrating Mary Seacole, and we've got a great special guest, so it's going to be an action-packed evening. Martha,
Can't wait. Actually, it's really exciting. It's so lovely to see how many people are attending, and the laughter that we had before this, it was amazing. Anyway, my name's Martha Lambert and I work for Ealing Libraries. It's my pleasure and honour to be co-hosting tonight's talk with Rudi and the wonderful Blossom Jackson, but more of that later. Ealing Libraries began these series of talks in 2020, as Rudi said, a series of overcoming barriers. We wanted to increase and improve the diversity of events and programs that we were running, and we also wanted the programs to reflect the local community throughout the year. Mary Seacole Day gives us the opportunity to include this icon of British history in our program. Tonight's talk is divided into two parts. First, centered on the force of nature that was Mary Seacole. She overcame racism, sexism, and the social mores that were put in place to stop people like Mary from stepping out from these barriers. She was born in Jamaica, and her birth site is now the National Library. She was a woman of determination, discipline, character, and courage and caring. Some of the attributes that gained for Mary Seacole: respect, recognition and honour from Queen Victoria, the British Army, the press, and the people of Britain as one of the great heroes of the 19th century. For the second part of the evening, we'll focus on the people that came after her, and I will hand over to Rudi. For those of you who may be unaware, Rudi is an award-winning management consultant specialising in management, policy implementation, international trade support, healthcare management systems, workforce development inequalities, and corporate social impact. He was also recently appointed Goodwill Ambassador to the UNACWCA, which is a lot of letters, but actually stands for the United Nations Association of Ghana, Commission for Women and Children's Affairs. He's also currently working with the NHS to overcome inequalities in the workplace. And if that's not all, he's also looking at vaccination hesitancy and why there's such a high rate of people from the Black, Caribbean, African community who don't want to take it. So I'm going to hand over to Rudi now. And first of all, you're going to tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll jump in with some questions.
Thank you very much for that, Martha, and you kind of put it quite well in a nutshell. So my work in the NHS and community development has always been on the system, the management, and how the delivery of equality plans, how they're implemented as part of the overall policy, which was important. And then also being able to work within the system to, in a sense, dismantle those barriers the best that we can, that enable people to be involved, to enable the improvement of representation. So that's where we get the term overcoming unseen barriers. Some of them are cultural, some of them are historic. And at the end of the day, the term that we use, the important term, is that the values of respect are really the common ground for all of us, regardless of our background and status. And our work really reflects that approach.
So, Rudi, can you sort of give us a little bit of an idea of why do you feel that, in particular, the Black and Afro-Caribbean communities are hesitant about taking the jab?
Yeah, one of the challenges that have been in terms of the impact of the the virus pandemic, the starting point really is that, yes, there's widespread fears and concerns that had been expressed, particularly last year, that the disproportionate impact on African and Caribbean population groups. And there was a feeling there in terms of community transmission. And of course, there was a lot of bereavement, that there was a feeling, there was a lack of sensitivity to the care about what was happening at the time. And so this kind of led to a kind of mistrust then, and a lack of confidence when it was then stated, well, there's now a vaccine, and those the minority communities would be one of the first groups to have the vaccine. So that caused concern. And then the other point that has to be said as well is that there was a lot of misinformation as well, and the misinformation was very powerful. So that fueled fears. And even though there was concern with regards to science, experimentation, and some of these things hadn't taken place in this country, but nevertheless, all of that stoked up the fears among people. So the challenge for myself and other colleagues has been to what we call ensure that the community is informed, reassured, they get the reassurance they need so that they can make the right choice. And we've done that through what we call trusted messengers, through clinicians, scientists, immunologists from our communities. And also we've had our faith leaders, our churches, and, setting out very clear, it's not a challenge to the biblical, anybody's biblical principles and faith traditions in order to take the vaccine.
Do you feel that the way that the programme was rolled out especially to the Black and Afro-Caribbean communities, that it was not done in the right way? What do you feel they could have done better? I mean, I know hindsight is one of those things that we can look back on. Yeah,
hindsight is an exact science, and I guess, and the system has learned and is learning from it. It's that they really needed to get the workforce on board, because, as we say, the workforce is the community and the community is the workforce. And within the African and Caribbean communities, there are experts, immunologists, there's community pharmacists, there's GPs. And in the early days, they really weren't brought on to be part of the team delivering that message, because at the end of the day, the people will listen to who they trust, who are part of the community, and the fact that they weren't there again caused a suspicion. So there's been a lot of activity, and a lot of work now has gone into ensuring that there is a greater level of representation from the experts in the community, because they are there at every level within the system. And not only that, many individual experts themselves made the effort from the community to do their best, go on forums and explain what was going on, in spite of not necessarily being invited. So the fact that they have now been invited, I think, has really improved things from some of the work that I've seen being done all around, not just my work. And my work does involve actually working with the immunologists, with the GPs, with the senior nurses, with the scientists, with the social care managers and people like that from within the community. And the good thing is, it's all evidence. It's up on the websites, and people can go and view them at their will. And of course, even our Pentecostal churches like Church of God of Prophecy in Ealing, in Newham, and in Enfield, in fact, have incorporated the information sessions within the actual Sunday service itself, and there we promote those as community well-being services. And then we've had Reach Society, which has a lot of professionals from the African and Caribbean communities, scientists, GPs, toxicologists. And again, they've hosted forums where all of that collective knowledge and expertise is there to share. It's all been online, broadcasting live. And then finally, we've had the African Caribbean Leadership Council, again, a group of community organizations, and the Women's Committee hosting, again, those information sessions. And then, yeah, and one other, community pharmacies, the African and Caribbean community pharmacies have been out there. And community pharmacies are important because there's a generational trust from the neighborhood with their local pharmacies. And they've been able to, again, give people the information and reassurance that they needed. And that's within the neighborhoods, because that's where it's important. So we've still got some ways to go in terms of, you know, being there with the rest of the wider community. But the most important thing, progression is being made. And we've got the committee professionals involved to ensure that there is community progression.
I think, I mean, that you're right, that we need more people from the local community, yes, to be talking to friends, neighbours, and churches, and trusted people for the community. And we had a campaign about 4 weeks ago, which had a lot of high profile Black and Afro-Caribbean Asian people fronting it. Do you feel that, why do you feel that didn't work?
Well, see, one of the challenges is that I would say it may work for the people who know them personally, friends and family of them. And if they're encouraging, that's a good thing. But we can't just put people up on the basis that, you know, because they may have a name, that's going to influence people. It comes down to friends, family, people who you trust. And that's why, you know, you need a community effort as well. And you want the people who've got the expertise as well. But not only that, we've got Dr. Beverly Lindsay on here as well, you know, who are leading some of the diaspora organizations as well, and having the high commissioners. So again, it's having the diversity of people who have influence within the community, and it's a wide diversity with various backgrounds, as opposed to just focusing on a handful of people and then putting them up to try and influence the wider community.
Putting on your international hat for one moment, Rudi, what do you feel about the rollout to the countries outside of Europe, in Africa and the Caribbean? How do you feel that, I mean, they will need the vaccine? Have they got the money for it? And how do we ensure that they're vaccinated as well?
Yeah, and that's a good question, and a delicate one as well, of course. In fact, I was on a forum a few weeks ago with Caribbean High Commissioners, and there was one of the High Commissioners from the Caribbean, and these were primarily Caribbean commissioners to the UN or to the USA, to the US. And one or two of them was saying that they actually needed more vaccine. Mm-hmm. And that was the irony that was pointed out by High Commissioner Ramakan when he was on one of these forums, when he said that, you know, we've got the level of hesitancy here, but yet in other societies, they're saying they need more. They're concerned. There's a term that's been used, vaccine desperation. So you've got some societies with vaccine desperation, then you've got our society with vaccine hesitancy. So, but I'm not going to make any comments on that. That's how it is. Yeah.
Thank you, Rudi.
Yeah.
I don't know if anyone's got any questions for Rudi or want to make any comments. No, maybe not now. So I'll hand back to Rudi.
I think Blossom, you need to unmute.
Oh.
I just wanted to say that Rudi and I shared a board, the Northwest London Enterprise, some years ago. So I've known him for a very long time. He didn't know I was a nurse, however, so it's strange how life works out. So I'm pleased that we are together again.
Yes, indeed, very much indeed. Right, thanks for that. So we're really going to go now to the Mary Seacole part of this. And just very quickly, my role as it relates to Mary Seacole was that in 2005, for the bicentenary celebrations, I was a project manager for Guy's and St. Thomas. And it was a major undertaking at the time. We actually did a conference with London South Bank University. We had students over here from the Caribbean, and Guy's of St. Thomas kind of spread them around the hospital according to their which discipline that they were studying for. We had an actual Mary Seacole exhibition at the Florence Nightingale Museum. We had the Kiwanis involved, who supported the students as well with some of their expenses, and so it was a real great community effort. And in fact, Alex, who was the director of the Florence Nightingale Museum, did a lot of work at the time to ensure that particular Mary Seacole initiative went down very well. In fact, the launch of Guy's, we actually had over 200 people there at that. So that was my first involvement with Mary Seacole. And then I was also involved with the Mary Seacole Memorial Association. And that's an important part of this discussion, because for many years, Mary Seacole had been sort of almost forgotten and overlooked. And it was a lady called Connie Marks in round about 1981, where, so it's basically nearly 40 years to the day, where they were able to start to bring back Mary Seacole and talk about her. And I'd just like to read a few points from another lady who was very influential at the top around that time, was a lady called Shirley Graham Paul. Some people may remember that name. She's passed now, but she was a midwife, in fact. In fact, she told me once that she had actually delivered 2,000 babies, 2,000, because I remember just think it's remarkable to be with somebody who can say, I brought 2,000 babies into this world, which I just thought was incredible. So the Mary Seacole Association itself was founded in 1980 by a number of what they called themselves at the time Seacolites, or Friends of Mary Seacole. And what they really wanted to do was to raise awareness of this great Black woman. So each year on the first year of May, they had this commemorative service followed by a lunch and a lecture. So the actual first service took place on May the 14th, 1981. And that, in fact, was the centenary of her death. And so at the time, they actually had a committee. In fact, and what spurred them on, I should say, Connie Mark at the time. So there's Connie Mark, Vi Lawrence, and Shirley Graham Paul. was that they actually went to the launch of Zilly Alexander's, an ordinary jewelry's book, Wonderful Adventures of Mary Seacole in Many Lands. And Blossom is going to talk on that a bit later on, and you kind of see the interconnection between everybody. So this was held at Brent Town Hall. So having heard the story and the history from Ziggy, they realized that there was something that they wanted to do about it. And there was somebody called Nadia Katous who dressed up as Mary Seacole, and I did actually meet her as well, funny enough. And they really decided that something must be done to really recognize what Mary Seacole had done in the Crimea. And so once they were able to locate the grave in Kensal Rise Cemetery, and so that was all part of the launch of the book. So the Lignum Vitae Club members were committed, and they paid the annual fee for the cleaning of the grave, and then they really then went on to do the wreath laying every year. It was either the first or second Saturday during May, which kind of does coincide with International Nurses and Midwifery activities as well. And so at that very first meeting, the very first meeting was actually at the Jamaican High Commission. And that was when the High Commission was at 50 St. James in sort of that Piccadilly area. And the High Commissioner at the time was High Commissioner Ernest Peart. And present in that meeting, as recorded, was Connie Mark, Vi Lawrence, Shirley Graham Paul, Margaret Brayton, Nadia Katouche, Norman Mosquito, Steve Tharp, Aditha Tharp, Maud Henry, Sister Monica, that's Sister Monica Twang, and Herma Fernandez. And I'm really pleased, 90% of those I met over time. And so, and that was the committee, and it really, over those last 40 years then, really continued up until, of course, COVID. So it was only COVID that really has broken it, and I'm sure it will start again. So I'm so pleased then, as part of this great time, because it's the 40th anniversary, and the fact that we are able to celebrate it with Blossom Jackson and what she has really achieved when it comes to being involved in nursing. We're just going to get a hint of it today, I must say, because Blossom has achieved so much. We're actually doing 3 separate programs. So today is just a taster, because we wanted to ensure that this particular day would be marked by Blossom. It's almost like Blossom also has been hidden, but she's been within plain sight. Is that she didn't tell everybody what she had done in nursing. And as you'll hear, much of those who've come after Blossom, and many of them learned from Blossom. So I'm so pleased that, and particularly the work we've been doing, Martha, in terms of the importance of recognition, and ensuring that people get the justice in terms of the recognition for the work they've done.
Absolutely.
This is going to probably turn out to be our best piece of work in terms of when we hear Blossom's story. So I'm now going to pass over to you, Martha.
Yes.
First question.
Well, thank you for that brilliant introduction to Blossom. And I think, as Rudi was saying, hidden in plain sight. So we want to bring her out into the light so that everyone knows really what she's done, what she's achieved. So first of all, I'm going to ask you, Blossom, can you tell us about your background and what your first impressions were when you first arrived in the UK?
Yes.
Can you tell us what year you arrived?
Pardon?
What year did you arrive here?
1954.
Wow.
But you wanted to know a little bit about my background.
Yes.
Because if you don't know where you're coming from, you won't know where you're going. And I think there's a saying, show me the man until he's 7, or show me the girl until he's 7, show me the woman. So first of all, let me pay tribute to Mary Seacole and reiterate what you have said, Martha. A woman of determination, discipline, character, courage, and caring. And these are the attributes that I've tried to aspire through since childhood until now, even now that I'm an octogenarian. Now, I was born in Jamaica in a village called Long Road in St. Mary, 6 miles from Onoto Bay. My mother was the first president of the Women's Federation in our district. And I can still remember her preparation for the visit of Lady Huggins, who was patron of the Women's Federation at the time, who visited Long Road, and her preparation for tea. And she had taken much notice of how English women or the English family prepare for tea. And in no uncertain terms, she told her team, cucumber sandwiches, sponge cake, and tea, and it was drank, Lady Huggins was able to drink it from our best china from our drawing room cabinet. And surely enough, she turned up, Lady Huggins, in her billowing dressed white gloves and spoke to the congregation. The second thing is my father, who left school at 14, became the first MPB for Eastern St. Mary when Jamaica attained universal suffrage. He was a go-ahead person and belonged to the Labour Party under Bustamante. You'll have to read my memoirs to hear about some of the things that he had done. But what had happened in 1951, he had lost the election a 3rd time because part of the reason I believe was my mother was the wind beneath her sail. She was the academic, but he was a very bright, go-ahead man and entrepreneur. He was in the Citrus Growers Association, the Banana Growers Association. And he lost the election in 51. He had 10 acres of bananas blown down, and he decided to come to England to make a living. And that marked the exodus of dozens of people from Jamaica, from Long Road. And he hosted them all or found jobs for them when they got here. But I was the first of 6 children that he sent for. In the summer of 1954, I was involved in a number of things, including voluntary teaching whilst I waited for the results of my examination. But I was also vice president of the Women's Federation at the age of 18, vice president of the 4-H club, and a member of the choir. And I still have my address, handwritten address, given to me at what Jamaicans call a send-off when people left the island. And they commented on these things. And the motto of the 4-H club was make your best better. So in September, my father sent money for me to come to England because they wanted nurses in England. And at the age of 18, I traveled alone, first to Cuba, then to Portugal, and then here. When I got here, remember they didn't have telephones. So he didn't get my letter. So I turned up at Heathrow and managed to find myself in a strange country going to someone at the airport and saying, you know, my father was supposed to meet me and he's not here. The British Council it was. And this lady said, and I wish I could thank her. She said, don't worry, my dear, we'll find her and find your home. I had my address. So imagine my father's amazement when I turned up with this lady who said, I'm depositing your daughter to meet you. And she was assured that he was my father, because otherwise they would have found accommodation for me. This was in Beckler Road in Shepherd's Bush.
Thanks for that. What a great intro. Blossom, you had a distinguished career within UK nursing. Tell us how and where it all began.
Yes. Well, my cousin Esther Collington had traveled a month earlier to start nursing. Yes. And
we're hearing it now.
Pardon?
Carry on.
Yes, to start nursing. And the British Council had sent her to Moorfields. So I applied to Moorfields because I'd arrived here armed with a testimonial from Dr. Martin, who was a doctor at Anotterby Hospital, and my teacher. Those days, you took your testimonials. I was called for an interview at Moorfields, and then my father decided to take me. And Margaret McKellar was the matron and Sister Spon, the tutor. And I was brought in, and my father took over like the typical politician. She'll make a good nurse, she'll learn well, and all the rest of it. And the matron said, Mr. Ball, I think Blossom is quite capable of speaking for herself. So he kept quiet. And after the interview, I was accepted there and then, measured for my uniform, and went home with my father. And on the way up the escalator, Shepherd's Bush escalator, which is quite long if you've been to Shepherd's Bush, my father said to me, one thing I have to tell you, Blossom, always remember the next Black nurse who is going to follow you. Mm-hmm. If you do bad, you will make it bad for her. And if you do good, then they will look at the other Black nurse that will follow you. And it seems to me that this must have rubbed off, because when I did my teaching practice for my health visitor tutors examination at Oxford Brookes, where I later turned up to be principal lecturer, and Julia Brown was one of my students. One of the students who followed me the following year came to me and said, the tutor said, you're not like Blossom. It was never intended, but as you say, the motto for its motto, make your best better. Not better than anyone else, but make your best better. At Moorfields, I was awarded the Progress Prize, to my surprise, for nursing. And then I decided that after getting my diploma for ophthalmic nursing at Moorfields, and I'm wearing my Moorfields badge. Okay. And there, the standard, you know, Moorfields is a world famous hospital. Mm-hmm. And at that time, you had your time on the ward, and for the final examination for your diploma, you were examined by the physician and the matron. And it's interesting that one of my examiner for my oral examination was the Queen's physician, Dr. Frank Law, and I still have his signature on my certificate. Then I decided I wanted to go back home to marry the chap I thought I wanted to marry. And my father said, excuse me, don't be a damn fool. How many ophthalmic hospitals in Jamaica? Go and do your general nursing. And Sister Spun sought me out and said, "You're going to Addenbrooke's." I said, "I can't go to Addenbrooke's. None of my friends are there. It's too far from London." "You're going to Addenbrooke's." And there I had a wonderful time as a student, part of the academic community. My social life was wonderful. My time there was wonderful. And I will briefly tell you that when I qualified, that's my Addenbrooke's badge. The matron, Otley, it was her wont, all the people who had finished their examination, were successful, were lined up outside her office. And she congratulated us, kissed us on both cheeks, which would be frowned upon now, and pinned the badge on us, and gave us the staff nurse's hat, which was shaped like a nun's habit. And there I staffed. Very few people were given staff nurses' job because not everybody can be staff nurses. And I staffed for 6 months before going to do my midwifery. How are we doing for time, Libby?
Yes.
Right. So I did my midwifery at St. Helier Hospital. And then I got married and went back to Moorfields as a charge nurse. And then I decided, after my marriage broke down, to change my life. And I went back to college to do some academic subjects because I thought, I'm interested in nutrition. Nutrition will keep people healthy. So I need some O-levels. And I did it for 6 months and managed to get four O-levels after 6 months because it was truncated, and I would be damned if I was going to wait 6 months and not get anything. And it was there that I heard a lecture on health visiting, and I thought that's what I wanted to do. And I was going to college during the week and nursing from Friday to Sundays to earn a living. And so when I told the sister at Chelsea Hospital for Women, it will be a waste to the nursing profession. You see, many people didn't know what health visiting was about. And I can say that I will never be able to go give back to health visiting what I've gained from it. Because when I started, I had a caseload of 500 families, 65 elderly, and 3 schools where I taught health education after doing City and Guilds and the rest. But I felt that I'd outgrown the field in the middle 60s. And I'd done my City and Guilds, and I thought I'd like to do health education. And it was there I met my first glass ceiling, because the medical officer of health would put me in charge of the largest clinic in Greenford. And I was the only Black health visitor among 4 people who were older than me. That clinic pioneered GP attachment. And he told the superintendent that the doctors had said, I'm the best health visitor who would come to Ealing, which was a lie. They didn't understand health visiting. There were people who were better than me. But I had the advantage. When I came started health visiting, I looked up all the doctors and I went to them and I said, I'm Blossom Jackson, I'm the health visitor for your families. And I think they were so taken aback that I might, if they were rude to me, that they would be labeled as prejudice, that they worked with me. So that was what happened at Ealing. But when I applied to be health education officer in Ealing, I felt I was passed over. And that same medical officer of health, I went to see him, Dr. Seppelt. And he said, put my hand on my heart. I think you can do the job. And you know, I can't countermand my deputy who made the decision not to interview you. But sometimes it's good to go elsewhere because you have the capability. I said, Dr. Seppelt, I don't want you to tell me what's in your heart. I want you to tell me if you think I'm capable.
Yes.
And he said, I was. And I went and I was a second health education officer for Camden. And one of the important things I did in Camden was to work with Mr. Nicklin, who was the senior health education officer, to launch an anti-smoking campaign pioneered by ASH. And at that time, the head of ASH was Brian Ricks, the actor.
Yes.
So we gathered cigarette butts all over the borough, and a big pile of fire on Hampstead Heath and many more things. We had a road show. It was highly successful and reported in the papers. And I also ensured that when health visitors went into schools, they went in a professional manner and don't just give talks as if it is a gimmick. So they had in-service training. I also developed a curriculum for teaching health education in schools, in primary and secondary schools. I don't have the documents here, but I have them in my study. I'd have to search for them.
Yeah.
And it was there I was headhunted to be senior nursing officer, education and training. And I said to Mr. Nicklin, I'm surprised that I got the job. And he smiled at me and he said, why are you surprised? I think you would have walked over them in the interview. I said, what do you mean? He said, did you not interview us when you came for your job? I was always a confident child, I have to say, and I got it from my parents. So, how are we doing for time?
Yes.
It's all right. Can I just quickly ask you, because right at the beginning, bring you back, you said about Mary Seacole. How did you first find out about her? What was it that made you?
Well, I was on the West London committee with Dame Jocelyn Barrows and Connie Marks when the book, The Wonderful Adventures of Mary Seacole, was published. And you know, it's the research, both Ziggy Alexander and Audrey Duage, the authors, did some research about Mary Seacole and added to the book and published by Falling Wall Press. So it was the Northwest London committee that launched the book. And Sister Monica was also on that committee. And after the launch, we went to do the wreath laying at Kensal Rise Cemetery. And I'll just read you the Guardian comment on the book. A fascinating account of a Black Victorian woman who seldom allowed the social restrictions of her day to stand in the way of personal freedom. Echoes of my own life, I dare say. So I used to attend the meetings and many of the people that Rudi has mentioned.
Yes.
Now, very briefly, because time is running out, from there I went to the Northeast London Polytechnic, where I pioneered the school nursing course. I was appointed course leader at Oxford Brookes, where one of my students, Julia Brown, was, and I was the first Black principal lecturer at Oxford Brookes, and I was on the regional board for the UKCC. Yeah. From there, I went to the UKCC, where I was the first Black nurse who had reached the most senior position in the history of nursing in the UK. Yeah. I did resign and set up my own company after that.
And when you were doing all of this back in the day, and then we're talking about very much in the sort of the 50s and 60s, where, I mean, the infamous Rivers of Blood speech was going on.
I remember that.
How did you actually manage to succeed despite everything that was going on? Was it just the different people that you were with, or was it just your own personality? As you said, you were a confident person. Were you able to kind of rise above the subtle racism?
Well, I met no racism in my nursing career. I met enablers from these powerful matrons who were named, because don't forget, there weren't any Black senior people there.
No.
In the 50s. And when I arrived at Moorfields, I was the first I was one of the first 6 nurses who were trained there, and the same as Addenbrooke's. And I will say to you, at Addenbrooke's, in my final year, I remembered I was in charge of the ward, and this sister taking the drug keys and looked at me, and I didn't even know she was writing a report. She said, "You have done well, haven't you, Nurse Bohr?" So I sat there not knowing what was coming. And she said, "Aren't you lucky to have been trained at this hospital?" I didn't think about racism because I had not met it in my training. And I met enablers. The patients, my peers, treated me as equal. I had not met it. So I said, "Sister, I don't know what you mean." And I think she was taken aback at my response. And she sat there with a poker up her back. And I said, "Sister, I don't think I'm any more privileged than anyone or any other nurse who was trained at this hospital." And she was dumbfounded. She didn't know what to say. I didn't mean to be rude, but that's how I was.
Yeah, of course, greatly confident. Right, Blossom, as I said, this is part 1. So we've got 10 minutes now. So for the last 10 minutes, I'd like you just to, when you decided to become an entrepreneur, why did you choose publishing amongst the other things that you've done?
Well, publishing was just a part of it. The main thing is to set up a multicultural book shop, one-stop, that librarians, teachers, and individuals could come to, because they wouldn't have time to research these books. And our first catalog, which we had specially designed, Pablo Books, and the name was the first 3 letters of both my partner and I. We had borrowed £12,000 to set up the company, and we were going to do it properly with a launch at the Jamaica High Commission. And at the time it was Helen Bogle.
Yes.
And I remembered at the time, in her opening speech, she said, it was Hilaire Belloc who said, "His skins were scarlet, but his books were red." I remembered that. I have it on video. Anyway, we started big in the sense that we got the books written by Black and Asian authors from all the publishers. So we set up accounts from all and extracted the books: Penguin, Random House, Transworld, the company that wrote Black England. The name escapes me at the moment because I'm talking off the cuff. And so this catalog had 16,000 input, covering books for children 0 to 16, fiction, plays, and also Nubian Jack, the board game. That's where I first met Jack. And also when he was writing his book, he also consulted me, and I had forgotten that he had given me tribute in that book until I met up with him last year. Then I worked with the Literacy Trust. Reading is fundamental. And I also did set up a reading and writing workshop for prisoners at Cookham and Maidstone prisons, and published books written by the prisoners. And Martin Neri, who was the then head of the prison service, sat in on one of my evaluation, and he did the foreword for the book, which I edited. Now what else? It's just a skate through.
Yeah, no, that Blossom, that is excellent. So just before I come to Martha to close, that's been a fantastic overview, and there's a lot more detail that we will go into over the coming months. But like we said, I believe it was important that today's Mary Seacole Day was marked by the recognition of your contribution, and we're going to see a lot more. And of course, you know, our very own Derek Clement, of course, another Ealing stalwart. You know, I couldn't let the program go. Martha knows him well, fellow Grenadians.
Well, he did my hair. He did my hair today.
That's all I needed you to say.
That's why it looks so wonderful.
Yes, so Derek Clement, and he in fact is going to be our Windrush guest next month, talking about growing up in Acton and Ealing area in the 1960s and 70s and 80s. So anybody who was growing up in the Ealing, West London area between the 1960s and 80s, you're welcome to join us on the 23rd of June from 7 till 8:30. So Martha, I shall now pass over to you for you to close us out, basically.
Yes, I think you stole some of my thunder, Rudi. I just want to say thank you very much, Blossom in particular, for a wonderful talk. I think your life is definitely an epic saga. I can't wait to meet you again for number 2 in the program. I feel that as the library service, we wanted to improve and increase the number of talks in our program from the Black and Caribbean community. And it's so diverse and so many different experiences that our communities are living and experiencing. So I want to thank you very much for telling us a little bit about your life. And as I say, can't wait for number 2. So with that, I'd like to say thank you again to Rudi for helping to put together this evening. And thank you all the people that are here tonight who've come in to listen to Blossom and to Rudi. We can't do these talks without you, and it's fantastic that you're here tonight. If you want to find out more about the talks, they'll be on Rudi's platform, which I'm sure he'll be able to tell you, and they'll be on the library's Ealing YouTube channel as well. So that's Ealing Libraries YouTube at some point towards the end of the month. And as he said, that we've got our next talk with Derek is on the 23rd of June. And that would be sort of around the children of the Windrush generation. It's usually the grown-ups, the adults that get the look in. But this time, Rudi and I were talking and felt that the children, we were the ones that were brought up by these strong Caribbean parents. And so it's time for us to have our say about what it was like.
Absolutely. Go and get the belt. I remember that.
Oh, yes, the belt. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
Right, thanks.
Marcia, can I say how grateful I am to both you and Rudi. I feel very humbled. It was totally unexpected, but it's been an honor for me to share this journey with who have taken part, people that I've known very well, and blessings.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
And I must mention Dean Roden from Connecticut, USA is here. And Enid, have you got your hand up?
Yes, I have.
All right, great. Yes. I'm glad we're going to hear you. You're going to have the last word.
Well, I just want to say I was sent this WhatsApp via my church by one of these, and I have enjoyed it, and especially Blossom. It allows me to continue to pass on to the younger generation
Yes.
the need to be focused and confident in what they're doing.
Yeah.
So I'm so
Absolutely.
grateful. And also for the librarian who spoke as well, really, because I came here in 1961 and I did ophthalmic nursing as well and went on, but I was at the later stage.
Yeah.
And so I'm so grateful for you all tonight, and I will continue to follow you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we're going to make sure we hear more from you at a future, because we want to know more about your life and growing up and what it was like when you came here. So that's great. So I'm glad you put your hand up, Enid. So we'll definitely be in touch with you.
Well, may I say I have done a Zoom class. I'm doing it.
Okay.
The gentleman is teaching me.
Excellent.
So you have put your hands up
Excellent.
when speaking.
Excellent. Excellent. Okay. All right then, everybody. We've hit.
There's somebody, Rudi. Have we got time for?
Oh yes, of course. You're yes. All right.
You need to unmute.
I'm clicking you to.
You need to unmute. Femi, you need to unmute.
Unmute.
Congratulations, number one. You made me think of a record I heard. I think it was a Jamaican one, I'm not sure, but it's a hard road to travel. And you've been on that road.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. And I tell you, you have done a lot of things and went to a lot of educational places that would help young Africans and Jamaicans, West Indians to copy you and go to those schools. You came here in 1954 and I came here in 64. So you are 10 years ahead of me, but you've done wonderfully well. Congratulations and God bless you.
I just want to add, we don't come from Ealing, we're in Essex,
Yes.
but we know Blossom, and when I got the invitation, I said, no, we'll have to come on the platform. And I personally would like to congratulate you on what you are doing, because Black and brown people have been in the background for too long. We have no written stuff. They know nothing about us. And I think most of the problem we have now is because we seem to be invisible.
Yes.
Yeah.
And yet we have contributed a lot. So more grease to your elbows.
Thank you.
And we'll be praying for you and supporting you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
And on that note, we bid you good night and
Good
look
night.
forward to seeing you again.
God
Thank you
bless.
very much.
God bless.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
Thanks again.